next definition we have is qualified person. And there's kind of two big components to this definition. The first part is that a qualified person is a person that has skills and knowledge of electrical equipment and installations. And I want to pause right there because that's kind of the end of part one. Part two talks about having received safety training to recognize and avoid the hazards involved. So there's two distinct components here. Let's talk about the first part first. A person with skills and knowledge of electrical equipment and installations. So here in the photograph, we've got my buddy Scott Harding and his company up by Maryland, and he and I were doing a seminar on the National Electrical Code, and we are helping to ensure that his people are qualified persons for the systems that they work on. Now, it's really important when it comes to this definition to be honest with yourself. Nobody is qualified for everything in the electrical industry. The industry is far too broad for that, and I put myself in that as well. I'm qualified for some things. I am not qualified for other things. Here we've got this panel board, or potentially a switchboard. I feel very qualified to work on that. I've worked on that many times. I know where the hazards are. I know how to avoid the hazards. I'm familiar with the lockout system. I would create what we call an electrically safe work condition. I know how the equipment operates. I feel very much qualified to work on probably anything in this photograph. I am not qualified to work on a customer-owned substation. And maybe you are. And if you are, hey, that's great. I personally, I'm not. This is at a facility where I teach. They buy their power at 130,000 volts. This stuff is customer-owned and NEC regulated. So because it's covered by the NEC, does that mean that I, a licensed electrician, should be working on it? No. I don't know what I'm doing in a customer-owned substation. If you do, great. Go ahead and work on it. But I guarantee we could go through installations and find something. I mean, I've got about 20,000 photographs. I guarantee we could find a picture somewhere that every single person isn't qualified for, right? I mean, if you may have done a lot of stuff in the electrical industry, but nobody's done it all. And it's important to be honest and tell yourself, you know what, I'm not qualified for this. Because when we lie to ourselves and our coworkers and we pretend that we know what we're doing when we really don't, that's when people get hurt or even killed. So it's imperative that you're honest with yourself about what you're qualified for. Here in the power plant, now this is not regulated by the NEC, but here we have some conductors, phase A, B, and C. These are 26,000 volts, 22,000 amps, installed in what we called hexa sulfur fluoride cooled isophase systems. You think I'm qualified to deal with that? Are you kidding me? No, I didn't even know what that was until the person I was walking with pointed to it and kind of chuckled and said, "Do you know what you just walked past?" And I said, "No." And he said, 3 really big wires. And I said, "Oh, okay, well, I'm not qualified for that." You know what I mean? So let's be honest about what we're qualified for. So skills and knowledge relating to the operation and the construction of the equipment that we're working on. All right, I'm qualified in everything that I can think of in a house. Not qualified for everything I can think of in an industrial facility. If you're an industrial facility, you may not be qualified to do stuff in houses. You know, you may be the right person to call for hazardous locations and for busway and for, gigantic isophase installations like this. Doesn't mean you know how to wire a solar installation, does it? So nobody's qualified for everything. The second part of the definition says that a qualified person must have received safety training to recognize and avoid the hazards involved. Look, safety training is part of being an electrician. It's part of the job. Here in the photograph, you're looking at my laptop in the foreground. I'm taking a class on NFPA 70E, the standard for electrical safety in the workplace, taught by my buddy Chris Jensen with UL, because I have to receive safety training. It's part of the job. Nobody's exempt. If you're an NFPA 70E instructor, you still have to take safety training because the industry evolves, practices evolve. We get new technologies, new ways to work safely, new protection techniques. So being a qualified person is an ongoing endeavor. You may be qualified today and not qualified tomorrow. You might never be qualified for a particular type of equipment, and that's okay too. I have no intentions of ever wiring a customer on substation. Now, does that mean that I shouldn't learn about them? No. If I'm a curious person and I want to learn about them, I think that's time well spent. But I also recognize that maybe I'll never do one, so maybe I'll put that on the back burner and focus more on the things that are important to me, the things that I really do need to be a qualified person for. Now, how do we use qualified person in the code? Well, generally speaking, we don't regulate who performs electrical installations. That's done at the state or local level by licensing and things like that. But there are some provisions in the code where we'll have exceptions. We'll say, okay, you have to wire it like X, ABC, unless you're in a supervised industrial location where qualified persons are servicing the installation. Then we'll let you do something else. Usually that's how it works. So we don't say who does stuff, but we say, look, if you have only qualified persons, limited public access, supervised industrial facility, we'll let you do something to, I don't want to say a lesser standard, but a different standard. We also require qualified persons to perform installations on some of the alternative energy provisions back in Article 690 for solar, 705, 706 for energy storage systems, where we actually say you need a qualified person to perform the installation because the equipment is very unusual. Remember that an energy storage system, at the end of the day, is a giant lithium-ion battery. I don't want to sound too doom and gloom, but it's a bomb sitting in your garage if it's not done correctly. If it's bad equipment, it gets damaged. So we want to ensure that qualified persons are making that installation. So there you go. Qualified person, 2 parts. Skill and knowledge related to the equipment that you're dealing with, and safety training to recognize and avoid the associated hazards. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and ring the bell.
Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and ring the bell.